Hello friend, welcome back. It's good to see you. And today I'd like to talk about this game, 2 Point Campus. This is a 2022 business simulation game developed by 2 Point Studios. And 2 Point Studios is a British developer, and they've had two games. This one that came out in 2022, and 2 Point Hospital that came out in 2018. And these games are published by Sega, as you can see in the bottom right. The founders of 2 Point Studios are Mark Webley and Gary Carr, and they came from Bullfrog and Lionhead Studios and worked on titles such as Black and White, Fable, and Theme Hospital. And Theme Hospital is the big inspiration for the 2 Point series, starting with 2 Point Hospital, which was intended to be kind of a spiritual successor to Theme Hospital. And so after its success, the team was inspired by a number of media IPs, including like Harry Potter and Animal House and Grease, and they wanted to kind of do something a little more youthful and kind of play into a lot of the university tropes, I guess, and came up with 2 Point Campus. And so from there, you know, the developers spent time building out new systems for individual traits of characters and graduating characters through a series of years that will build up over time and kind of deepen the player's relationship with the characters in the game. And kind of built out a lot of the building design systems as well in this title. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll of course talk about the game as I recently completed it. And before we do any of that, let's just show off the copy I have here. So this is 2 Point Campus. This is the enrollment edition. And so right off the bat, what we have here is actually a cardboard box that actually carries the game itself within it. And I quite like the feel of this texture. It's just nice and feels premium compared to just having a game on the shelf, which was pretty cool. And I also just love the style of the packaging itself. I mean, it's very colorful, it's interesting to look at, and it looks nice on a shelf, I think. So on the back here, they just say, build your university your way, create the campus of your dreams, shape the lives of your students, manage a deep, fun, evolving world. Build your own university with new creative tools, oversee a range of wild and wonderful courses, and guide your students to flourish and succeed. Now get to class, that's what it says. And so the enrollment edition, which I have here, includes a university prospectus, a campus map, and 2 Point bonus DLC pack. So let's crack this open. So we start here by popping the top, and let's get the innards out. So the first thing that we have here is the campus prospectus. Pretty cool. A little, I guess, a manual, more or less. But mostly what it's telling you about here is some of the various, I don't know, facilities and things to check out. So I have a little introduction here given by the head Dean Pumpernickel. And then we see some various pictures of the characters and alumni you will meet throughout the game. And let's see here. Oh, actually, hold up. I'm going to back up a second. Harriet Spellman must be related to me, if I was to assume. And then we have some pictures of the facilities you might have, which are all pretty fun throughout the game. You have a night school, the Cheese Ball Stadium, which is where you play like a 3-on-3 sports game. Not you specifically, but you just spectate in on it. And it also talks about some of the classes and has some silly other diagrams and kind of things here within. So yeah, this is just kind of a nice little, it is basically a manual. And so I do find that funny in the modern age, 2024, that a manual would be something you would include specifically with a special edition of your game. And then also we have the campus map here. And so this campus map shows off really the entire, I would call it a country, in which 2 Point games kind of take place in, because the campuses are kind of sprinkled throughout, and I think at the bottom here they have some of the names of the campuses. So in the overworld of the game, you'll kind of hover your cursor around the world, and then you'll select a specific campus that you're going to play next. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, here we go, campus map. And then here's the actual game. So the art is different from what was on the box that we took it out of. So I always like that. I comment on it. The packaging on the back is the same, so nothing specific changes there. And then on the inside again, we have CD art, which is different. And we also have the 2-point bonus pack, which I used the code for. So nothing really interesting to see on the back side of that. So let me just kind of consolidate some of this stuff here, and then we'll talk a little bit about the game itself. And it sounds like some of my neighbors are shooting off fireworks. I don't know if that showed up in the recording, so I guess we'll see. All right, so we have the box, and then we also have the game here as well. All right, there we go. So I had originally played 2-Point Hospital maybe a year or so back, and I really loved the game. It was fun to kind of take on the role of a hospital administrator and build up or save hospitals and their patients along the way. And I really enjoyed a lot of the business sim activities in the game. Everything from managing and looking at cash flow reports to determining how much staff one can really absorb while maintaining some profitability, and training those staff and managing patient queues and patient care and success of it, because the better you do or the worse you do, you will build a reputation, and it will cause more or less patients to kind of come and go and ultimately save or collapse your hospital. And I always felt like there was a very real-time strategic motion to playing that game and kind of managing so many aspects of it. And so upon completion, I had come to know about 2-Point Campus, and I said, well, hey, I really loved 2-Point Hospital. Let me dig into Campus as well. I bet it's super fun, and the idea sounds quite fun as well. I mean, if you're taking on and building up these, university campuses. So when it comes to the gameplay, when it comes to any aspect of this game, I think I will spend a little bit of time kind of comparing my experience to playing 2-Point Hospital to playing 2-Point Campus. And right off the bat, from kind of a gameplay perspective, I can say that 2-Point Campus plays much more casually to 2-Point Hospital, and I'll dig into a little bit about why I make that. From a mechanical sense, what you'll do is you'll play through a series of schools around the country, which we looked at on the map, that need essentially an administrator to come in and either build up or save and turn around these universities. So similar to a lot of sim or kind of theme type games, you'll kind of hover around the world with a cursor, and you'll direct activities such as building properties and constructing rooms within them that will serve a specific purpose for your students or staff to go to. So it might be academic classrooms for specializations or lecture halls. You might be building dormitories for your students to sleep in, or entertaining areas for the students to hang out in, and so on and so forth. And so from like a living and breathing environmental aspect, this game plays very fun and is super enjoyable. And the amount of variety you'll manage is very fun too. So like on one campus, you might be at a wizarding school where you have to train students in the dark arts and in wizardry. On another campus, you might be running an academics university where you compete in the cheese ball stadium, which is a sport in which people throw, it looks like cheese into grinders. And the more cheese you get in the grinder, then that team ultimately becomes the winner. And so it's very fun to kind of see what each level is going to do. You will run years of schooling, and students will come and go. They'll pass their classes, or they'll fail and repeat or drop out, and ultimately go on to graduate, which is really awesome. And so you'll complete that cycle year over year, and you'll continue to build or maintain or improve your campus in ways that you see fit, or in some of the challenges that come along as well. So each campus has 3 stars that you can unlock, and these 3 stars will require you to hit certain benchmarks. So maybe you win the cheese ball tournament, or you maintain a 75% student happiness while graduating 150 students. And once you complete the first star on each level, then you can move on to the next. And I think there's, I want to say like 12 campuses or so, all with a variety of things to get done. So let's just start by talking about the gameplay itself. So overall, it is a very business sim type game, and there's not much to really adapt beyond that. There will be what I just laid out as kind of the general overall gameplay. There's also various interfaces and reports and things to kind of mess around with as well. But one of the things that I faced playing this game, comparative to 2 Point Hospital, is because you're on this academic system, which kind of pauses at the end of the year before you start the next one, there really is kind of a set it and forget it kind of vibe to playing 2 Point Campus. After I had gone through and completed each of the campuses, then at that point I was able to just go back and kind of focus on getting some specific trophies and stuff. And later on, when you have kind of developed what you need to for the campus and your student enrollment kind of begins to plateau a little bit, there's nowhere further for it to go because you have to develop courses through getting campus points that can be then invested to increase enrollment or increase the variety of classes you offer at your campus. You can just kind of start the next year and then just walk away and do the dishes or vacuum, and by the time you come back, you won't really have missed much. Whereas in 2 Point Hospital, I felt like I consistently was on top of what was happening in the hospital and with my staff and with the patients, and worrying about building out the appropriate amount of rooms and so on and so forth to maximize profitability and manage patient care and so on and so forth. And a lot of these factors just weren't so present in 2 Point Campus, and so that, coupled with the fact that it's nearly impossible to build a failing campus, doesn't make the game nearly as challenging or engaging. A great example being there's a trophy to get 50 students to drop out of your campuses. And when I first started looking at some of the trophies that I wanted to collect before putting this game on the shelf, I had a total of 6 drop out across the course of the entire game. I played probably 30 hours worth of 2 Point Campus, and only 6 students had dropped out. So that didn't really seem super challenging if 6 students on 12 campuses ultimately left before I hit that 1-star point. So I then took one of my campuses. I basically demolished all of the rooms, made it just a big empty lot with 200 students, nothing to do but sit on the ground and starve and you know, dispose of their waste all over the campus, which was pretty disgusting, to be honest, that they just allow that to be an option, but it is. And still, it took like 2 consecutive years before enough students left to unlock a trophy where 50 drop out. So, and at the same time, that campus was still maintaining its profitability. I had like $5 million in cash, even by the time all these students dropped out, in 2 academic years had passed. So there was a lot there from like the financial management perspective, the student management perspective, that just wasn't really crossing the wires for me in terms of just creating a challenge. And maybe a lot of this comes from having played 2 Point Hospital, which was quite a challenging game at times. And I don't know, I just it didn't challenge me in the ways that 2 Point Hospital did. And I know that 2 Point Studios is working on a 3rd game called 2 Point Museum, which I am again very excited for. And I do hope that they will take it back to the roots of Theme Hospital and 2 Point Hospital and continue to develop the appropriate level of challenge, I guess, because for me it was just far too casual of a gameplay experience. And I did kind of talk about this a little bit, but some of these challenges also come in the form of staff management. So in 2 Point Hospital, staff were very fickle. You know, they needed to have breaks. They needed to have a fantastic break room for them to energize in and feel happy with work. You needed to manage their wages very appropriately and give them raises over time, or else they would get upset and quit your hospital. And once you've invested enough training and time into staff, you really don't want them to leave, because you want them to continue to operate effectively at your hospital, happily at your hospital, and apply all the training you've invested in them to appropriately heal your patients and appropriately diagnose your patients and timely treat your patients as well. And none of that is very applicable here. On your campuses, you'll have to manage assistants, which kind of run a lot of the less academic buildings, food stalls and the library and so on and so forth. Now, in the real world, librarians are very academically excelled. There's a lot that was required to become a librarian, but here in the game, they're just assistants. You have professors who run your classes, and then you have janitors. And I don't remember a single point in the game at all where I was ever notified, hey, this staff person is unhappy. I mean, the most I would get is like, oh, you need to build a break room because your staff wants to take a break and so on and so forth. But I never developed a relationship of caring about or worrying about what the staff were doing at the campus because their costs were never exceeding the tuition that was coming in, and they were never unhappy. And so I never prioritized any of those aspects of the game. And there's reports where you can kind of manage what the staff is doing and what roles they have and how happy they are and when to take breaks and things. And I use those a lot in 2 Point Hospital, but honestly, I never interacted with them at all here in 2 Point Campus. And so I don't know if that's a reflection of my experience with playing 2 Point Hospital already and why it made the game feel easier. But these were systems that were completely bypassed throughout my gameplay experience of like 30 plus hours. And so I was kind of surprised by that. So because of it, there's a lot of interfaces and reports and systems that just went completely, unused in my gameplay. The most that I used was like, there are campuses that are warmer or colder and you need to kind of manage the temperature. So I would use the temperature maps. Or attractiveness, do you have flowers on your campus or do you have posters on the wall? And I've used those from time to time to, again, management. But this was something that happened in 2 Point Hospital. I kind of got into this area where the game becomes more of just a cheesing situation. You want to build your campus level up to the max so you can unlock course points and unlock more courses and bring in more students, etc. And these aspects, as a result of not really having those more micromanagement details in the game, felt very at the forefront of the gaming experience. So like, if you wanted to improve a room's level, eventually you run out of items to interact with and to kind of put in the room and kind of expand the room out. So you just kind of lean on filling the walls with posters. You just put a poster on every single free space in your campus buildings and in your rooms, and ultimately that will drive up the level to continue to push your campus level up. And campus level is also driven a lot by training staff. So in 2 Point Hospital, where there was a direct correlation between you train your staff, they better diagnose, they better treat, they quicker treat patients. In 2 Point Campus, you just don't see that as turnaround as much. And so I was kind of hoping that there was more utilization of these systems. And for me, they just kind of went to the wayside and I never really interacted with them too much, making 2 Point Campus feel like a more shallow gaming experience than 2 Point Hospital was. And I hope by me kind of explaining this as kind of invested as I am, you can tell I really did still enjoy the game, but I would have liked it to do a little more with what was there. And another big aspect of not interacting with those systems nearly as much is that from a controller basis, this is a game really designed to be played on a computer, and so there's just so much you can do in the interface. That I think a lot of it gets lost as well. Lost in the sauce, so to say, because the game doesn't really spend time showing you like, oh yeah, you should be checking XYZ report to see like how your students are doing and so on. And so while one of the goals kind of going into this game was to develop a better relationship between the player and the students, and the characters in the game as far as that goes, I feel like it's something that 2 Point Hospital succeeded in doing more. Because if your students are doing badly, they don't do much. They don't do much at all. They'll barely even drop out, based on my experience. And your staff doesn't interact with you either. But in 2 Point Hospital, if your staff are upset, they might quit. If your patients are waiting too long, they might die. So these are like the stakes are a lot higher. And so I feel like that was a bit of a step back. So from a gameplay lens, I love business sim games. I love theme games, park games, sim games, whatever. But when it came to playing 2 Point Campus while having a smooth interaction of the game itself, and fun time building out campuses and enjoying meeting some of the challenges in the game, those challenges were very casual and not particularly difficult. So if you're not looking for anything difficult, something you can just start a new year in and just walk away, not even play the game, then 2 Point Campus is going to be right up your alley in some ways. So moving on from the gameplay, let's talk about the story aspects. So each campus has its own kind of unique objectives and story kind of underlying it. One of my favorites, I already pointed out, was like the wizarding school. There's another one where you are running like a celebrity school. So you're training people for their singing talents, their acting talents, so on and so forth. And you actually don't make money on the campus. You have to bring in basically the Church of Scientology to convert your students into giving them a tithe that they then turn around some cash to you. So I really did like some of the setups, I guess, for each of these campuses. But as far as like getting deep into a story, these often become easily ignored because where the story is left at is inside of some random text bubbles that'll show up when you complete challenges and so on and so forth. So there wasn't much going on from there. I think part of it is building the story experience for yourself. And I feel like in most games that doesn't usually work particularly well. One of the trophies in the game is to beat the Mega Jumbo team. And they're one of the cheeseball teams that you face on the academic campus. And that was actually one where I did actually personally invest quite a bit in the students and beating the team, because the team is very hard and it requires a high student level of like level 17 or something like that. So I poured a lot of money into making the best facilities and training my teachers up to the max and making my students super happy and sending them to private tutoring so that they could grow that level further and further. And then to see them go up against the Mega Jumbo team or whatever and lose, I was crushed. I was so crushed. And so I was really invested in them winning. And finally they did, and I got so happy by it. But these are things that I would hope that kind of get built into the game, and if they are built into the game, and it's really where you start to take it to getting that 3rd star on the campus, then either trim back the time investment to hit those stars and enjoy the full-fledged story of the campus, or build it a little more into the game itself, I guess, in terms of the challenges. Because when the challenge is like, make your students' population 75% happy or more, then that's not as engaging as like, oh, actively something's going on the campus and there's a certain student who's joined your student body and is wreaking havoc. So there's a spy campus, and spies from other schools will infiltrate and they'll confuse your students and make them perform poorly academically, and you have to kind of suss them out. So little things like that are very cool gameplay quirks that could have been built into more creating character around some of the students themselves. And so that's something that I would have recommended the team to do, to build kind of on the story aspects of the game. Because as it is, it's kind of light, and it doesn't really do much if you want it to. And it's expected that the player would kind of build that story for themselves by creating those deeper relationships with specific students and with their staff and so on. But we've already kind of described why maybe that wasn't as particularly effective as it could have been. So that's it from a story lens. To summarize, again, wish they could have done more here. From a sound aspect, the voice acting is very limited to a lot of the radio announcements that kind of go on. So there's 2 Point radio, play music, and the DJ will come on and say some things occasionally. Or there will be some notices that are sent around your school that are all quirks or quips and funny jokes and so on and so forth, often fitting the theme of whatever school you're in at the time. And I did actually quite like these and found them to be enjoyable. And I thought the performances for the voice acting did carry the kind of cartoonish aesthetic that the game wanted to go for. And that was fun. But I think that's all of the voice acting. I don't think there's any more voice acting past that in the game. So it is very light, but it is engaging for what it is. From a music perspective, the music is pretty generic. I think there's some various soundtracks for each of the campuses as well, but I don't remember hearing one of them and thinking to myself, wow, this is pretty cool. I gotta go check this out on YouTube and just add it to my like OST playlist. So I'm always looking for that, and maybe that wasn't here as much. Another thing I wanted to mention is that from a sound effects perspective, none of the sound effects really stand out in terms of their interactability either. I mean, there's some for like if you graduate, you know, you'll hear like cheers and things going off, and there's a nice musical accompaniment for graduation and things. But I don't know, there could have been more to the game in terms of sound effects, notifications, things that would alert the player to happenings on your campus, and there really wasn't a whole lot of that. You can get a more tailored listening experience if you zoom deeply into one of your classes ongoing, and you'll kind of hear noises of what you would expect in that classroom at the time. But these were, again, super light and something you really had to be looking out for. You had to zoom in, get really close into the class to even interact with and hear those sound effects. So nothing really stood out particularly for me here. And then thinking graphically through the game. So the game looks great. And that's about what I'll leave it at. Graphically, I think it's an impressive game, and has a staying power as far as its kind of art direction goes. I really love kind of the cartoony look to the characters. The style really makes me think of the old school theme park kind of games where, you know, the characters don't look particularly humanish. They kind of look like these small little sprites that are cartoonish, and I don't even know how to describe it. You just have to go look up like a lemming, right, from the game Lemmings, or just go look at Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, and then you'll know exactly what I'm describing. But it does seem like they've taken those 2D characters, they've made them 3D, they've blown them up, and now here they are interacting in the 2-point world. And so I really love the art direction in the game, and it is high fidelity, you know, powered by Unreal, and so it's just kind of cool to see that idea reimagined from the 90s here in 2024, and just looking great and being engaging and performing quite well. There are some performance issues with the game. Once your campuses get large enough, like 200 plus students, you'll begin to run into some challenges in terms of interacting with the game. You know, you want to build a room and it'll freeze for a second or two just to load the tools so that you can begin doing it. So you will run into that. But I was impressed by how many characters can be on your campus and moving around and in real time doing various animations and things, and the game holding up as well as did. So it's not required by its visuals to be as great looking as it is, but I think overall the art direction and the look of the game are great, both from a technical perspective and just from a viewing perspective. And so that's kind of 2-Point Campus and my thoughts across the game. So to trim it up, gameplay wise, the game is very smooth and interactable, but I wish there was just a little more depth and challenge. And somehow it took a step back from 2-Point Hospital, which I was surprised by. The story is very light, and the developers expect the player to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of creating the story for themselves. And for me, I've played so many games, you know, I'm looking to have the game do a little more for me in that respect. The sound is all quite light and in some ways generic and didn't really engage me too much, but I did love the look of the game. I think it's so fun to play a game quite styled as 2-Point Campus is, and it just continued to do something different and unique for me in terms of just my enjoyability of looking at and appreciating the art in the game. And so overall, it was fun and it was fine, but I just wish it did a little more for me from a challenge perspective. I wanted to be challenged. I love business sims, especially hard ones. And this is more like a survival sim game, but Banished is probably one of the best I've played in this respect, and that was a game that really required me to think pixel by pixel how to set up the world. And not that I'm asking for that, but I'm asking for just a little more for me personally to be engaged. And I might not be the audience. Maybe they don't want to make a challenging game and they want to make it more fun and casual for people. But when your game is easy enough that I can build out some of the classrooms I need, and I can start the academic year and walk away and do chores in my house for that whole academic year. Come on, I just want a little more. So, but those are my thoughts on 2 Point Campus. I'm curious if you've played either 2 Point Hospital or 2 Point Campus, or maybe you're just excited for 2 Point Museum coming up. I know I am, even though this game was a bit more miss than a hit for me. I really loved the original, and so I'm hoping that they bring back some of that challenge again. So, but would love to know your thoughts. I really appreciate you checking out the video. If you like it, please like the video, and would love for you to subscribe and just join this community and hang out, and let's chat games and kind of see what we're playing in the future. So, all right, y'all. Well, until then, stay well, stay healthy, and look forward to seeing you next weekend. All right, take care. See you.